gang, welcome back to another installment of Truth and Thriving in This Time of Awakening. It's been months since I last made one of these. I hope you have been enjoying the Wayshowers podcast that I've been putting out in the interim period, but it's time to spill the beans on some totalitarian measures you may or may not know about, because when you know the truth about them, you will have the means and maybe even more of an inspiration to move towards thriving. Today, I just literally came back in from the punching bag here in the garden. I was going at it. I punched it so hard that the thing smashed into the ground. I enjoyed it. I had to do that to move some of the anger that I felt from just reading about the World Health Organization pandemic treaty yet again. Because these people keep trying to push this thing. In the last round, it appears that our African friends, they protested. They said this pandemic treaty is not good for us. And since they need, as far as I understand, a unanimous vote for the pandemic treaty, they had to go back to the drawing board. But if you live in a Western country, and also probably in most countries around the world, your government, your health authorities just recently, a few days ago, I think it was 12th to 16th of June or something like that, you sent delegates to the World Health Organization to negotiate the pandemic treaty. And this is some James Bond villainesque document, an agreement that it's kind of out of this world that this is even happening. If there is a baby crying in the background now, it is because I just became a dad. And that is one of the reasons why over the last several months I've been quite busy and I've been able to put out more of these Truth and Thriving videos. I heard that crying. I don't know if you did. Anyway, it may happen. So here we have a pandemic treaty that supposedly is being designed to make us safe in the event of a future health emergency, an international health emergency. And well, you may be aware that we're in deep financial dire straits because of the various lockdowns that were pushed on us during the pandemic, that we know scientifically up and down, like we know they didn't work. The only function of these lockdowns was to destroy our economy. We also know that there was no excess mortality rate in the population in 2020. But once the vaccine was introduced, excess mortality shut up. We started to see cardiac arrests, all kinds of clotting disorders, an increase in cancer, neurological issues, neurodegenerative brain illness, and so on and so forth. Our health authorities don't hide that this is happening. They just pretend that they don't know why. Well, if you were to apply Occam's razor, you may just put two and two together and say that we have a pretty good guess at what is going on. So, World Health Organization wants to make sure that we get to experience a lot more of these kinds of pandemic wars in the future. And apparently, they're very sure that we're going to get more pandemics this decade. The various oligarchs, people like Bill Gates, are very sure we're going to get more pandemics this decade. I'm sure they have no reason to know that. They're probably just guessing, right? It's not like they would make one. Well, the COVID-19 virus was made in a lab. We cannot even argue that at this point. That has been well proven, and maybe there will be more moments of disclosure in the future. Maybe it's not so sure that it escaped from the Wuhan laboratory. Breadcrumb trails seem to move towards even Ukraine, so we will see where that trail ends. But for now, we're faced with then the possibility that this pandemic treaty is going to be a reality, and that the various constituent membership countries need to opt out by November this year. And I'm Norwegian, so I'm following mainly what's happening in Norway, even though I live in Sweden. But I think Sweden is much the same. Sending the delegates, they're probably got starry eyes that have been indoctrinated into thinking that all of our systems work just fine, and that these people obviously have everyone's best interest in mind, which they proved so skillfully over the COVID-19 pandemic, right? They did everything really well, don't you agree? So, here are some of the things that are featured if we don't stop this pandemic treaty by November. One of the things is that Tedros and his gang of compadres will be given the authority to determine if we're in a state of pandemic at, at a whim. They can choose, yeah, feels like a pandemic to me, and then we're in a pandemic situation. And once the pandemic situation has been declared, the pandemic treaty kicks in and suspends national governance, national sovereignty for all of the membership countries. Then World Health Organization will take over control over the various health measures that your country are going to introduce. This may include how you're going to be quarantined, kept in various forms of imprisonment, if you are expected to be a spreader, if you're expected to be ill, or maybe even if you're expected to be a dissident. That's my guess. Also, they can choose if you are going to receive a vaccine or a drug, and it won't be optional. They can mandate that. And now that we actually see that, for instance, in Pfizer's initial study, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shared on Joe Rogan just a few days ago, I think a cultural watershed moment, that in the vaccine group, there was a 400% higher incident rate of cardiac problems than in the control group. So maybe they're going to create just a wonderful, wonderful vaccine next time that they're going to inject you with. But why would they care? American vaccine manufacturers have legal immunity. They cannot be sued in any way for damages incurred by the use of their products, as per the act passed by the Reagan administration in 1986. So they have no legal or financial incentive to ensure that their products work or are safe, which has, among other things, led to more than 70 vaccines being on the vaccine schedule for children in the US. And again, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. revealed in the interview, none of them has been tested for safety or efficacy because they don't care. But Tedros will have the privilege and the authoritarian power to choose which vaccine will be selected as the holy grail. Oh, we take the one from Moderna, we take the one from Pfizer. Probably not at all related to them paying billions of dollars in support to WHO. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with that whatsoever. And then they get to say you have to take this, otherwise you're an enemy of our war on this virus, this germ, whatever. And then, well, we'll see if they come up with a suitable form of punishment. This is coming. Do you like it? Do you understand why I had to go out and hit the punching bag? Given all of these rights, do you also then understand that I may not fully approve of Tedros being under investigation for genocide? The man that is about to be given these rights, privileges, stands accused of killing and torturing people in his homeland of Ethiopia. This is the man who will have dictatorial powers to determine if you are going to inject an experimental product that has been developed hastily over the last week straight into your veins. What do you think? Must be a great idea because they're doing it, and of course they're good people. Like no reason to distrust that they're anything any tomfoolery afoot here, right? I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with this. So here's what I propose. Read up on what's going on. I need to read more. My knowledge of this is fairly superficial as of today because, as I said, I've been busy. But let's read up on this and let's do what we can to expose what is going on and to publicly shame the politicians who I'm sure travel to these negotiations with starry eyes and believe that they're doing the most wonderful thing in the world, because politicians these days and the various leaders of countries and NGOs, media institutions, they are picked because of their authoritarian proclivity. And that authoritarian proclivity comes from being yes men and women. They don't have a moral backbone. As a whistleblower from the United Nations, whose name I currently cannot remember, but he was interviewed by Reinhard Fulmich in an interesting interview. He was sharing how there are no men in the United Nations or in the associated organizations. They're all part of the same soup, right? They've been trained to be yes men and women, to not object, and to think that everything that the systems do is perfect and wonderful and a gift to humanity. These people, let's just say that we shouldn't trust them, and that it's our job and our duty, whether this is going to go through or not, to let the world know. So do the work, I recommend, and let's fucking stand together against this bullshit. And not necessarily because we are guaranteed to be able to stop it, but because this is how we get to be strong and sovereign agents. So if it actually comes to happen, we get to live with ourselves as people are sent off to camps, are forcefully injected by dangerous medication. We get to live with ourselves because we are actually on the side of our conscience. And ultimately, I believe God has got this. Truth will prevail. But at least now you know that the pandemic treaty is creeping up on us. And if your government, if the people running your country don't opt out by November, this will likely be your future. So that's all I have for you today. I'm going to return to parenting now. Maybe I need to go box a little more. Not that I'm a great boxer, but it feels good to move this energy through the body because I am no big fan of tyranny. But you have a great day. Ask any questions and share any comments below in the comment field if there's anything coming up for you as you hear this. And I'll see you in the next